This planet is ours, witch.
No, this planet is theirs.
This is Twisted from OpenFireGaming. Today I'm going to be doing a review on Dawn of War 2 and its expansion Chaos Rising. I'm going to see whether or not it lives up to its predecessor, or does it crash and burn. Now, if I were to accurately explain the story of Dawn of War, or Dawn of War 2 for that matter, I would have to go into the story of Warhammer 40k itself, which I'm not going to do because we're going to be sitting here for a couple hours then. So I'm going to give you the abridged version, which is basically what you just need to know about the story of the game itself. Pretty much, the campaigns you play only as the Space Marines, which is a definite change from the original, where you could play as any one of the available races. When you play through now, whereas before it was more of a computerized risk game where you're just conquering territory by territory, now there's an actual story of progression, and you're moving forward and you have an actual objective, which is different from from the previous game. Like I said, you're playing as only the Space Marines, and pretty much without having to know anything about Warhammer 40k universe, you understand Space Marines are good guys, and they view as everything else as bad. Doesn't matter who it is, the Eldar, the Orcs, Tyranids, no matter what, especially Chaos. They specifically hate Chaos a lot. Okay, so pretty much everyone is bad, and thus you need to kill them. It's a fairly simple story, but it's easy enough and is portrayed in the right way for anyone coming into the game to pick up the story and understand what's going on. Plus, if you're like me and you're an avid Warhammer 40k fan, you already know all the backstory behind it, and thus things just make more sense. But it's not a requirement to know the backstory to understand what's going on, which was good, especially when you're dealing with a story as expansive as the Warhammer 40k universe. The graphics of the game are very nice. When you look at the options and you're choosing all of your settings and whatnot, you can see there's a whole variety of different setups you can choose, and you can go anywhere from low to ultra. And ultra isn't even using a setting on most games. Usually it's just high. Even here they break the barrier. I mean, even on my rig, I have to start toning things down, because if I were to set up everything to max, I would crash my computer. I tried it. It crashed. Right? Very, very good graphics. You can get insane detail to the point which you can zoom down to like boot prints and see the depression in the ground that they leave. This is only available, of course, on the higher settings. As for lower end settings, clearly some things have to be taken out just for the thing to run properly. Overall, though, very nice. Each race is depicted properly in the way they means, but then again, that's expected considering these are the people who made the original, and therefore, how could they possibly screw this up? But overall, very nice. The skills that you use are very flashy, a lot of lights, a lot of explosions. The particle effects look nice, although sometimes they can get a little repetitive. As you can see, there is kind of a cycle that they go through, but that's only if you're like over-analyzing it. Overall, very nice. All of the special effects that you end up using in the game look very good, and overall graphics are very good, alright? The gameplay is the biggest variation you see from Dawn of War to Dawn of War 2. In Dawn of War, it was your traditional RTS. You sit there, you build up your base, you create all of your buildings and such, your armories, your barracks, your vehicle producing places, you know, all that sort of thing. You amass up a huge army and you send them in, or whatever strategy you used. In Dawn of War 2, totally different. You have one base, just this main building that produces everything. Okay, there's no base building, with the exception of building extra generators at other points that you capture for power. So there's constant conflict, and there's really no way to do the turtle up and then attack strategy, considering you won't have enough resources to produce all of your units. Likewise, however, it's impossible to rush someone, because everyone's base, when they start, you start out with your HQ unit, one kind of troop, like the basic troop unit, and then 2 turrets flanking your group. So there's no possible way you could be rushed at the beginning of the game. So what usually ends up happening is people hurl their beginning units into the center of the arena, and then they start conflict there, and then they just keep feeding this constant battle, which is nice, because this way it just looks like there's always action going on. There's no, like, dead zone where it's just like nothing's happening unless you're sitting there trying to really outsmart each other. However, the games can be quite small, especially with limited troops available to you. Not selection-wise, but sheer just the number you can house. Squads sometimes have like an average max of about 3 or so units, so about 3 to 5. So these end up being fairly small groups. So it's a lot more tactical based. There's now a cover system implemented. Cover can actually be destroyed by bigger units, as you see with vehicles or monstrous creatures. Even some units that are equipped with Terminator armor or some other race's equivalent can just smash through objects, which is nice. And you see, the physics on those flying objects maybe aren't the greatest, but in order to be implemented in a scale game like this, they end up working fairly nicely. Again, cover is available now, so it's a lot more tactically based and there's a lot more thinking involved, whereas before it was just kind of mass and mob sort of thing. So some people don't like this strategy, some people do. I say it's a good strategy when you're doing it in big games, when you have like 6 players or something, or like you got like 4 on each side or something, 8 total. That's when it's good, because now it feels like this big massive fight. If you're just doing it like one-on-one, it looks like these really puny armies, and you don't really get that much of an experience. But again, like when you have a lot of people, the more people you play with, the better it gets, because now it looks like this huge army that's fighting, and there's all these tactics involved and new skills and multiple sets of war gear. Overall, very nice. I like the way they set this new one up. It is a bit of a shock when you first play and you're like, what, I can't create a big army sort of thing? What do you mean I can only have 5 in a squad? That sort of thing. But once you get used to it, you start to understand why that is, and the armies are now far more interconnected than they used to be, whereas before you could just do like a berserker rush or something, and you can hoard in just all Necron warriors or something, and now you have to bring different facets of the army together because they're far more specialized than they used to be. Whereas before, you could take just a ton of Chaos Space Marines all equipped with heavy bolters and just walk them in, and you can mulch up anything that came through. Tanks, demon princes, people, regardless in buildings. Now that can't happen. Now you actually have to bring in different facets of the army because they work differently. Because now, like, your regular Space Marine trooper or something can't actually injure the tanks, sort of thing. So now you have to bring along dudes with las cannons, or someone with a missile launcher, or maybe like assault marines with melta bombs or something. And also all the additional equipment you can give people now. Overall, I like the gameplay and the way it works now. Despite being a major deviation from the original game, I like the way it turned out. The concept of the game is a tactical RTS using small groups and small units in order to give the player far more control, because they're not trying to manage a huge army and such, which is also explains why there's a lack of control groups, but there's a unit hotbar on the right hand side that shows you where all of your units are and can easily click on them. It's a big deviation from the original gameplay, where it was just mass and mob strategies worked most of the time. Overall, this keeps the player more dealing with managing their actual army in the fight that's at hand, rather than managing the buildings and such that are left behind, because there aren't any. You only have an HQ, which makes things really easy and simple to deal with. It's not as extreme as Mark of Chaos was, where there was absolutely no buildings and the units you started with is what you had, but it's a nice median between no buildings at all and tons of buildings. So I like the way this concept turned out, and I think it definitely helped out this game. Overall, I think this is a very good game, with the addition of more variations of multiplayer with additional maps. Although they no longer support directly mods for the game like we saw in Dawn of War 1, clearly the modding community is going to find their way around these rules, and there will be additional maps and maybe even additional player-made races, and of course we can expect more expansion packs in the future. After all, they've only covered about 4 or 5 of the playable races so far. So I'd say this game has some pretty long legs in what it can do, and overall I would say this is definitely a good purchase.